Hello, and welcome to another week of the Abuse Cartoons live stream. Sorry, a little bit of noise there. I think I've got a little bit better light situation, not a great camera situation. Oh no, and I just screwed it up. All right, well now it's super bright. Okay, so hopefully that hangs in there. So I've got a big light on the side here, so I'm not just a weird, creepy silhouette. And let me check. Okay, good. Yeah, the microphone is coming through. So yeah, sorry. I when I disassemble this setup, if we're doing like live streaming for role playing or something, and I take things apart, when I put things back together, sometimes they're not quite right. So I do as much testing as possible, but yeah, I still think the backlight, I'm gonna have to get curtains because that backlight is too much. Too much. All right. A little closer. All right. Well, we survived the G20 weekend. So I didn't see a lot of, I'll have to go back and look, but I didn't see a lot on the local news about any protests or anything. So maybe they choked it, pretty severely, or at least, kept it under control. But usually when it's in Europe, you see all kinds of, burning trash cans and crazy protests. But maybe it was harder, if they put you on a list or whatever, it's probably harder to get into Japan to do that sort of thing. I wouldn't put it past Japan to do that, especially to preserve their image for the upcoming 2020 Tokyo Olympics. And I think, like I said last week, Tokyo's much better at doing this sort of thing because they're more used to foreign dignitaries and high security situations, and the Western Japan just isn't as much. So it was a little bit of a challenge, but I also heard that a lot of the smaller local police departments had officers pulled off to help do security for Osaka for the G20 event. So that means that all the hooliganism and minor stuff that goes on in the little rural towns in Japan, I'm sure, was out of control this weekend because there was minimum police officers to even do anything about anything. So that's kind of funny. They just take from the little guys to staff their security for the big events. But so I guess we'll hear eventually if anything went terribly wrong because of that. But also too, that's news that kind of gets quieted down. Let me make sure this is, and tilt this up a little bit. All right. So if this is the first time joining me, welcome. And this is just kind of a draw and hang, and I just talk a little too much while I'm drawing, so I distract myself and probably you as well. But hopefully it's something you can put on in the background, or you can just enjoy, watching things take shape and watching ideas kind of come together. I hope that it's interesting because this is kind of based on web comics or web cartoonists that I've heard, and this is sometimes when it's a writer and an artist, but as they're kind of brainstorming and collaborating, I thought it was an interesting thing to listen to and kind of how things come up or come together. Usually they were doing like news topical stuff, so I would just go to news sites and read through stuff and what catches you and what can you imagine. They'd kick things back and forth. I'm just talking to myself, but I think it's, still hearing the origin of something can be a little bit interesting. And if you enjoy this cartoon, hopefully this isn't too demystifying and too much of how the sausage is made, so it ruins your enjoyment of where the humor comes from or the inspiration. I don't know exactly, because I can't put myself on that other side of it very easily. I think I would want to watch this if I liked this cartoon, but I don't like this cartoon. I draw this cartoon. But so that's what this is all about, and I think we're all set. So feel free to yell at me in either the Facebook chat, which I think is working now, Facebook chat, YouTube, or the Twitch chat. I'm multi-streaming, kind of restreaming to all of these different sources, so hopefully it'll come across. They're supposed to have fixed the chat features with this restream service I use, but it seems like YouTube and Google hate this company, so they keep making them re-authenticate the API and are really being a little difficult with them. So if something isn't quite working, I apologize. And this will be, of course, in the archives, so there's more than a year now. Actually, I should take a look at how many there are, and there's probably quite a few. Many weeks. There was a year, and then I kind of took a break for a bit. So we're probably at like a year and a half. So that's a lot. That's probably like 75 or so previous episodes. And I don't advise going all the way back to number 1 because I was using different equipment. And it was a little bit hard to listen to. And you can pretty much, the air conditioning was your only companion in those early streams. But now I'm just having lighting problems because the webcam I'm using is always, the sensor is always weirdly unpredictable. Sometimes it gives me a nice image, and sometimes it doesn't. And even if I'm flooding myself with light, for some reason it likes the background much better. and I'm still getting the all blown out. So, all right, well, let's get to the drawing stuff. So finished G20, and now we're in the middle of a kind of a delayed rainy season. June is usually the month where it rains for weeks at a time in kind of a torrential downpour. And it took me years, but I finally figured out, just to get out of it, get under some sort of cover, go indoors, go under some overhang, and just wait it out, because it's very short-lived. And it was very bad to be walking in, and just kind of my American instinct, I don't have an umbrella, I'll just walk in the rain. And you get destroyed. I mean, just more than, I made another layer, more than soaked in that case. And finally, I figured out that I just need to take a break, get out of it for a little bit, and to come back later to deal with it. And it makes all the difference. And even if you have an umbrella, sometimes, it's coming down so much that maybe your head's not getting wet, but, from your chest down and your shoes and everything, it's just totally soaked. I mean, it is just, rainforest levels, I guess Asian, levels of torrential downpour. So it is monsoon-like. And we're getting the heat now. We're getting the heat of July, because right after the rainy season is done, it just stays hot, and then the humidity from that kind of came with the rains stays. So the hot and humid Japanese summer is in full swing, and now we've got the heat, but we're still getting the heavy rain. So it's a little bit odd combination of things, and I'm hoping it pushes the typhoon season a little bit later than usual too, because sometimes, so September is the typhoon season, and that can be a real fun time. Yet every week you're getting hit by something. We were supposed to have a typhoon this weekend, but it, like as it does occasionally, just goes off to sea. Because Japan, I guess, is roughly the size of California, so minor changes in air patterns and things can shift a typhoon enough that we're just getting rain, and the center of the storm misses us. So that's nice, but you have to always prepare for it, because when it hits the land, it hits pretty hard. Because I guess, unlike hurricanes in the Atlantic, kind of the East Coast, where they make landfall and they kind of move in for a while, these storms just go all the way across Japan and aren't, I guess the mountains and things, slow it down a bit, but everybody gets hit pretty hard. So that's always fun. So you have to kind of prepare, and that's why a lot of houses here have big steel shutters. So it looks like, and also the kind of traditional wooden, I'm sure there's a Japanese word for them, but they look like bars, but the wooden kind of decorative blinds that are on the outside of houses instead of shutters, they aren't security. They aren't for security. They aren't for people worrying about burglars. But it does look like that to Western eyes. But it's basically so tree limbs and things that are coming straight in from the storms, from the typhoons, don't break windows so easily. So there's a little bit of protection, between your window and between the window glass and the outside of the house. And then there's also steel shutters that usually, roll down between that. But for Western people, I've had a lot of relatives be like, "Oh, the crime must be so bad here. Look at all these bars on windows." Just, okay, whatever. It's just people don't get out of their mindset and can't. They just can't think that anything people live any differently than they do in their little world. But and so you'll see that, especially if you look at the older houses in Kyoto and things, that they'll have wooden, kind of shutters, very different from the Western, like kind of more European styles. But they have big wooden shutters that either slide over or pulled across or down over windows, and then they'll also have the kind of more decorative bars over the windows, or the kind of vertical. I don't know what you call them. I should look that up, because that would probably be worth talking about. But Yeah, so that's very funny. But thank goodness, no big results, just a bunch of rain. And so we're still kind of in the rain. I think all this week is supposed to be miserable. And I'm just going to talk about weather. But yeah, so we will see. Yeah, if you want to hear more of me talking, but just not to myself, started about almost 2 months ago. More than 2 months ago, because I think we just did our 13th episode. So we for the game podcast for Outer Red Hands are doing a weekly podcast. So it's me and usually Chris. Sometimes it changes depending on people's availability, but Chris and I have been doing a weekly thing on his lunch break and just kind of talk about whatever kind of game topics and stuff that we might do longer podcasts, and kind of what we're doing currently on the show, on the podcast itself. And so it's a quick little discussion. It's usually about 30 minutes, give or take. And we just kind of cover topics. So we're talking about cyberpunk this week. And kind of the interesting built-in, built-in politics, which one person commented on, which I think is a really good point. And it's definitely 80s, Reagan era 80s, and it has a weird 80s punk aesthetic, because it's called punk, but it's not, it's purple mohawks and, leather and whatever, kind of a street fashion kind of way, that aesthetic. But it's almost like taking a protest culture or but a more anarchy-based, like nihilistic culture, but the, kind of 60s and 70s protest culture, and using it against traditional science fiction. So in the same way the peace movement was, against the Vietnam War and the current administration and kind of the warmongering of the American government, this is about the, over corporate friendliness, I guess, of America in the 80s. So it's funny, and it definitely has its own kind of it is a product of its time, very specifically, and in that genre of writing too, although it's kind of stayed popular. But a lot of things that people call cyberpunk aren't cyberpunk. I mean, I don't think Philip K. Dick ever wrote cyberpunk. He was a writer from the 50s, and he wrote science fiction short stories in the 50s. He is more of a traditional, Heinlein, Asimov type writer with kind of built-in drug culture and anxiety and conspiracy and things built in, which kind of evolved that and made it interesting because of the kind of unreliable narrator or characters not even knowing themselves, like where they came from or who they are. So the loss of identity and the paranoia and just the the amazing things he was able to do in his stories. But then Blade Runner is the most conspicuous example of his work that everybody knows. Maybe Total Recall, but both of those are vastly different from the original stories, and they're not cyberpunk because it's not a direct conflict between a corporate in a corporate dystopia against some lower class or some kind of revolution based, anarchy based, nihilism based group of people that are just trying to survive or trying to overthrow the status quo, or kind of change things by any means necessary. Never like that. Even though he is from the drug culture, I would think the more Timothy Leary, mind expanding kind of use of drugs as opposed to, but I mean he does have very distinctly 60s political views. But I don't think anything he's ever done is cyberpunk. So it's more that bratty group of writers that were, just had a lot of style and not a lot of substance. And so it was so new. What they were doing felt new. So and was specifically a reaction to old sci-fi stories from magazines and things that they had grown up with, and they thought this doesn't speak to me, we can do better. But it's really juvenile rebellion. It really has a to me it has a just a real unappealing. Like once you're past 15, it's like this doesn't work very well. And because it is kind of suburban kid, like nobody with any real experience, of being in an uncomfortable place underneath the boot heel of, a culture or a society. And Chris, who I talked to on the podcast, made a really interesting point that, that's mainstream, it's mainstream cyberpunk. And that comes from, and I think the term that he was using was neon liberalism, basically talking about the version of this fantasy that suburban white kids kind of came up with, and it's not I'm liking these lumpy things. it's if you look at what people of color or people of marginalized groups have been able to come up with in this same sort of setting, it rings a little truer, it speaks a little better to what that situation would really be like. And there's a lot of there was a lot of Japanophile kind of weirdness in cyberpunk, assuming that Japan is going to buy the world, and so that mix of culture and katanas and kanji and neon and stuff was the the look and the coolness. And I think that's why the look of Blade Runner, I think, is why it gets called cyberpunk, and people kind of throw it in to that category. But I've heard it called tech noir, I think, when we were talking about cyberpunk and some of the other settings. I think it's more classified as tech noir because there is no cyber in Blade Runner. In the book itself, there's a little bit of his wife is addicted to this kind of machine that you wire into, and you have this religious experience with this figure where you're climbing a hill as him, I think like a Sisyphus kind of thing, or like a Christ, walking to the crucifixion type, bearing the cross. I don't want to use the wrong vocabulary, but yeah, carrying the cross to the crucifixion. So that kind of martyr experience, and that was like a religious experience that people wired into, but it was a specific unit that like communed you into this religious experience. And that was the closest thing to cyber anything. I mean, there's a lot of odd tech, but it wasn't very cyber. It was, but then I guess also too, what's become cyberpunk in movies and books, I think, like the Neuromancer, is the blending of that, what I would think of as a cyberpunk setting, corporate dystopia, with film noir, with a hard-boiled detective kind of thing. And so that's what Blade Runner had the feel of, because the police in charge of taking down the replicants, the Blade Runners, which is so funny. They just came up with that because it sounds so much cooler than "Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep?" So it had some of those, especially in its look and the way that what's his face directed it and lit it. It was very noir-ish, and. But so I think it gets kind of a little confused and lumped in there. And but I guess they did talk about I guess Gibson, because Gibson, he had done some Hollywood screenplays by that time. I think not by that time, but shortly after that, I think like 83 or whatever, he was writing the Alien 3 sequel. So I think he had done some. But that's funny, they've never done a big, and I think just because it's not easy, still people don't visually know how they would represent that very well. But there hasn't been a Neuromancer, big budget Hollywood film. But there's something that I read that Ridley Scott, that was his name, and Gibson had met and were talking about the inspiration for their setting and the look of things, and said, it was very similar and whatever. But I guess Ridley Scott's inspiration for the look of the city was actually Hong Kong, like his trips to Hong Kong, because he's a Brit, and not necessarily neon Japan, because I think Japan has never looked cruddy. It's very hard to find cruddy Japan. I mean, there's a little bit here and there, but yeah, Japan doesn't get so full of chickens in cages and animals sold on the streets and things the way that maybe Hong Kong or mainland China can get it. So Japan doesn't do dystopia very well. I mean, in anime and manga they do, but if you just want to film Japan, I don't think you can make it look too shitty. All right, I'm just drawing piles of lumpy stuff. Okay, well, I'll just keep going here, trying to get some inspiration for some other ideas. Oh. Yeah, so... all right. I can have something. Yeah, my sensitivity is not great today, or my hand, one or the other. Oh, but yeah, so Cyberpunk, yeah, we've talked about that a few times on the podcast, and when I was doing research for it, I was really turned off by the arrogance of these young guys who are like, yeah, down with the establishment of science fiction writers. And I like two types of science fiction, and neither of them are cyberpunk. I like the optimistic, exploration-based, expanding humanity, looking for God in the stars, reaching out to the heavens. More optimistic and more kind of intellectually obsessed, or maybe even existentially obsessed. Well, but I guess, cyberpunk has that too, but 50s and 60s science fiction. And or I like grim, dark, 41st millennia, horrible. It's dystopia in a weird sense, because I think everybody knows that it's terrible, but they've all kind of accepted their fate, and it's there's nothing but war kind of idea. I like that as well, because it's an interesting. I think it goes pretty far, being an interesting comment on kind of civilization and human values and things, and it plays around with it's just some interesting ideas. So I like real dark, ugly sci-fi future, or more brighter or more optimistic. And cyberpunk is like somewhere weirdly in the middle. It's dystopic and depressing and negative, but it's also cool. Just like the demo for Cyberpunk 2077, the little banter between the characters, what's going on. They have to say cool things. After this, I gotta get a bottle of whiskey, and this just nonsense about how badass everybody is, and that I guess definitely plays much better in the 80s, where people just forgave that stuff. We're just like, but now it just sounds so juvenile. Ugh. But so that's definitely part of my problem with it, and I just keep running into those things. I mean, I'm interested in that game, and like what you do, and the setting looks interesting because it's not mostly, but it's you see it during the day, like it's cyberpunk in the sunlight, and that was really wow, because it's always raining and dark. It's film noir, black streets, neon, and raining is your image from Blade Runner and various TV shows and things. You get that. That's the image. But so this in the daylight, and more of a sandbox GTA version of cyberpunk would be interesting, especially because it gives you some interesting characters and groups, because things are very gang based, and so people have their fixations. They're addicted to cybernetics, or they're addicted to the futuristic drugs or whatever. You can show little mutations of kind of human culture and human values in that setting in kind of a fun way. So it's fun in that way, but I don't like the fakey cool aesthetic, and that just kind of that Matrix thing. I don't know. I mean, I guess the 90s, was that 99? And so I guess they kind of they got away with that, but Now I don't know. It's too self-conscious, too self-aware, and feels very silly. I don't know what that is. It might just be my age too. I just, once you get old enough that you lose your your appreciation of cool because you're the furthest thing from it. So yeah, and I especially don't like nerd cool. Like, what nerds think is cool. It's just the worst. A long black leather trench coat and a katana, and whatever, whatever. But yeah, so that aesthetic is, I always get turned off by that. So Cyberpunk, yay! Yeah, so we have a little discussion about the kind of E3 reaction and people, bringing up race issues. I think the developers of Cyberpunk 2077 have just become a target for attack. I mean, they're Polish, so it's just a bunch of white guys in Poland, and so they've been a social media target now because they've made some awkward jokes and odd mistakes in kind of their messaging, and people are now picking everything. Once something comes out, then people pick everything apart, and they're on the list. But all right. So I don't know where we're going here. I like those lumps of stuff, but I don't have. Let's see here. Yeah, these boxes aren't doing much. Yeah, I don't think I can. These first two guys aren't that interesting. Maybe another more obviously open can, and I'm gonna hate myself for trying to do this well. But something, more obviously opened up. Oh, there's my pressure sensitivity. All right. Yeah, I'm gonna get my hand. Oh. Yeah, that's the one thing. So that I'm drawing. I think I talked about this before. I'm drawing on like an older Cintiq, but the palm rejection on this is really nice because it's got this is a touch version, so you can like pinch and zoom and do, but you can lay your hand right on it, and it's got good. I don't even know if that's a thing anymore, but it used to be. A palm rejection was a difficult thing. People would have to wear gloves, with the fingers cut out and stuff, so they're not, signaling the screen to do much of anything. But yeah, I've been always happy about how that has worked with this. I think I will fill this up just so I can put it on a better layer. Yeah, somewhere. What is going on? Oops. I'm still on white. Maybe this guy could be a little taller. Oops. Oh, that's cool. Yeah, from the transform, you can actually switch modes on that right click, which I accidentally did. All right, well, I'll think about this. Let's go to the next blank. All right. Oh yeah, I've got to change the, yeah, I forgot about that. Oh, so let me just check chat real quick. Hello, hello everyone. All right. Okay, nothing, I'll keep it here. Oh. And, uh-oh, what did I do here? Oh, I'm on that layer, that's right. Okay. Yeah, my Roomba wasn't very good from last week. I think it was last week. Maybe 2 weeks ago. Somebody in the comments was like, oh, that's supposed to be a Roomba. I see. Guess I shouldn't draw another cake. Especially a wobbly cake like this. No, do that on another layer. That was a little slow. So like a fish tank. So maybe do this. Yeah, I'll just get myself into this trouble here. I'm gonna do this edge all the way around. I gotta make that work everywhere. Yeah, so this is our problem. Just go up a little higher. Bah. Come on. Really? Thank you. All right. There we go. Something along those lines. An aquarium. Whoa, what's that? Yeah, aquariums are funny. Either full of fish or full of hamsters. Lizards, that's right. There's a lot of non-aquatic things that you put in aquariums. Try that again. Oh. Yeah, that's a familiar subject. Oh, it's actually pretty close to the right, drawing at the right size, which means it's going to look very thin. Yeah, I'll do the water as a second layer. Okay. I think that works. What is this? Whoa, come on. Oh, I'm doing Windows key, that's why. But boom. And let's maybe flip this guy, although that's always a boof nightmare with my wonderful drawings because I don't flip when I draw, so they've got a beautiful asymmetry. All right. All right. The labelless can opening marathon. Oh, so if they're open can or labelless cans, I probably should do some of this deal. That will work a little better. Yeah, always fascinated by labelless cans. Yeah, that's come up a few times. All right. So actually just move these up, I think is a better idea. Oops, I'm still selecting all. Oh, and maybe some fill. Yeah, so I can put things in front and back. I thought I had... Where are these? Oh, they're on that layer. Not anymore. Well, see, that's the problem. You get all... Alright, I think you've watched me do this multiple times on this live stream where you get into doing something and... Yeah, as far as layers, you do not keep track of layers, so things get a little messy. Mixed results. Sorry, labelless. Oh, come on. Label, I think it's going to have to be a hyphen, huh? Labelless can opening marathon was producing mixed results. I know I usually do that after, but I had that in my head and I know I'm going to forget it once I start going on and on about Japanese snacks. All right. Something like that. What's the other one? Ah, the aquarium. All right. Well, I guess let's get some color going. Should go everywhere. Probably. And here and here. Oh, actually, I don't. I can put a color on that. Maybe like an orange. Something a little contrasty. With the blue, and then go back to white and make sure that's there. So what do I got here? Yep, that's everything. Okay, and then I want to do a layer with water. So my watercolor will be that. And then with that mask in there, I can do boom. Kind of stuff. And maybe not here, not here, not here. Everything else can be underwater. Oh, that's closed off. And this too, okay. The same with this guy. All right, and then maybe a lighter color on top. Maybe just the line. Actually, that looks pretty nice. And gets across the concept and maybe some bubbles. All right. And a fish. Oh, maybe I'll dim it. Oh, and maybe it can cover everything. And then a lighter fin color. All right. Oh, actually, this can overlap, yeah, a little bit. And then, oh, actually, I don't want to make it transparent, do I? So maybe I'll put him below and make this transparent. No. What am I doing here? He's on top. Just find some blending. I don't think. Dum. That's actually not too bad. Very green. I like the bright. So maybe I'll just over the bag itself. I will mask that line with just some white, just on the fish. Okay. No, I gotta mask it with blue. There we go, yeah, duh. Okay. There's the fish. And bring it down a little bit. Now I don't have to worry about the transparency. Okay. And then the edges of the aquarium. Whoa. Here. I think that's fine. It's, yeah. Boom. Yep. All right. And then I'll put some shadowing on that and see if it works. It must. Oh, maybe just this is enough for this guy. Oh, and it doesn't even matter once we get to this point. There we go. And then the overhang here. And here. Same thing here. Just a little edge. And then try to bring some of these edges back out with the white. There we go. And the same for the bag. Guess I'm just doing a shadow underneath the fish. Yeah, because anything else is just cuts it down too much. I think I have to go with a bright white. And maybe over everything. Yeah. That's the only thing I think I can do with the fish. There we go. Maybe some edge of the water. Shininess on this? Yeah, it's plastic. Oh, I watched the Martin Scorsese Bob Dylan documentary about the Rolling Thunder tour in 75, 76, maybe earlier than that. But yeah, if you've seen any Bob Dylan, you probably have seen when he's got kind of the pancake makeup on and his big wide-brimmed hat with the feather in it, scarves around his neck, doing Tangled Up in Blue, which they didn't show. Maybe someone else has the rights to that performance or whatever, but they didn't show in the documentary. They showed a lot of other performances, and maybe because you've seen that so much, they didn't. But that's definitely where it was from. It was from that tour. The interesting part, or there's a lot of interesting parts and a lot of like wow about Dylan, and he was definitely sounded like not a lot of fun. Very difficult to tour with, and Joan Baez definitely sounded like she'd had enough of him at various times in their professional relationship, and but I guess some filmmaker followed them around on that tour and was just always there, and so had a lot of footage, and then Scorsese took that footage, and maybe his name would have gotten is what got it on Netflix, so he directed that, and but it was somebody else's footage at the time that was following him around. As far as I know, it didn't say otherwise, but there was some great stuff in there, and one of the funny details was Sharon Stone is in the documentary, and I guess she was 19, and her mother took her wherever they lived, Connecticut or wherever they lived. So they did a bunch of odd little small venues, traveling, RV all over the U.S. And in rebellion, because her mother took her to the show, and maybe she wasn't even really much of a Bob Dylan fan. I don't think a lot of rebellious kids in there, because that was kind of the more parents' generation, especially if they were into the folk version of Dylan. Lighter or darker? Maybe darker on the bodies of the cans. Anyway, so she said that in rebellion for having to go with her mother to this stupid concert, that she wore a Kiss t-shirt, or Kiss sweatshirt or t-shirt or whatever, and they had some difficulty getting in, and because it's small venues, Dylan was just walking by, and what's the problem here kind of thing, and just told them to come in with them, and made a little conversation, and noticed her sweatshirt or t-shirt or whatever it was with Kiss on it, and she said, "You like them?" And trying to be cool at that age, she was all like, yeah, talking about the meaning of wearing makeup on stage, and I think she referenced kabuki, and of course then Dylan knows something about kabuki, so he brings up some performer's name that he knew, one of the early artists, because Dylan toured in Japan a lot, so I think maybe a little fascinated, and said, yeah, but I don't think Nanchara-san, whatever, so-and-so-san would spit blood at the audience, referencing kind of Gene Simmons' stagecraft there, and she had no idea who that was. And I was okay. And but at that point on, that was where the pancake makeup started to show up. And there was one, the way they cut it, they just made it kind of feel very like a very direct influence. Connecting that conversation or that interview with Sharon Stone, and maybe I'll do something different, maybe brown. So that equivalent, because they showed Dylan in the mirror, like making very kabuki like marks on his face, and actually just having these very heavy pure white lines on one of the shows. And then later it just became this worn off pancake makeup kind of clown harlequin looking thing. But I was surprised how easily influenced, like he's just constantly absorbing things around him, and so that's a very good quality for artists to have, because like he went to somewhere in Spain to see a festival at a church, and they played guitar all night, and so then he wrote songs inspired by that experience, by listening to Spanish guitar. And so he was very influenced. And even the director said, when I first met him, whatever, they didn't have huge admiration for each other, I guess. He was, Dylan was kind of annoyed by the filmmaker, and the filmmaker was like, yeah, whatever, but knew he was significant, so he followed him around and was covering that tour, and said that he smoked his cigarettes in a European style, and he made some gesture, and then he said it, and then the next time he saw Dylan at a party, he was smoking in that style. So he was very easily influenced by things around him, and just kind of absorbed those influences, like and they just became his. So I thought that was very interesting, because you saw that come up a few times in the documentary, and documentaries are always very intentional, so they were kind of intentionally showing how he was responding to these these things in his environment, and kind of making them his. And the one funny thing about Sharon Stone is he eventually asked her, like all creepy rock stars, to come on tour with him and just handle the costumes or whatever, like do something. And one of the nights that she was there, he said, I wrote a song for you, and he went on stage and performed Just Like a Woman, and brought her to tears. And then somebody later revealed to her, that song's about 10 years old. He didn't write that for you. That's like, yeah. But, kids are very easy to trick, and especially 19-year-old girls that come with you on your tour. But that was a good story, and she had she's got a good sense of humor. I think she knows. Sharon Stone is very self-aware, and I think she can laugh at herself as a kid, and I thought that was a fun story, and very very rock star-ish. All right. Okay. Yeah, this is I don't know what this is. This is what this is. All right, go back to here. Get some depth to some of this piles of glop here. Yeah, I'm not sure. Yeah, I think it'll read okay. But yeah, I would recommend that documentary. Like, really lets you in on a lot, and it goes into his political. Because on that tour, I guess he wrote. I'm not sure if it was on that, but they made they gave you the history and the background of the hurricane, the Ballad of the Hurricane that he wrote. So kind of his political motivations, and just kind of how he responded to things, and that was a nice nice story, nice interaction, because he went to visit the boxer. It was a like a middleweight professional boxer that got falsely accused of killing someone in a bar, and Dylan wrote a song kind of describing the events and, you know, the miscarriage of the miscarriage of justice. I guess something's open here. And yeah, so it was great to see kind of the origin of that and how serious he was, and how, I guess by that time, especially after, you know, his folk phase, how he knew how influential his music was. And so the record company was like, okay, so if you want to make money on this, or you just want to get the message out, or, you know, he like met with record execs before they recorded that, and they were all thinking about, you know, well, we could get some play on the black radio. It was real, like, oof, real disgusting here in the business part of that. But his intentions were you know, so admirable. And, you know, kind of still a lot of his kind of ideas, like the review, like he called the Rolling Thunder a review, and so trying to do these old kind of medicine show, you know, kind of these very old styles of things. And he was motivated, you know, by a lot of more, you know, historical things that he knew about, and that was the inspiration for it. And of course, you know, it didn't make a lot of money, but it was, you know, an incredibly famous tour that a lot of people, you know, were lucky, and a lot of people that maybe wouldn't have been able to see him in certain situations were able to see a very intimate Dylan show. So yeah, but it's an interesting documentary. And any documentary that's been done about Dylan is never very flattering. I think he's, you know, he's got a lot of amazing ideas and things, but it's very hard to pin down. So documentaries and a lot of footage of him has that same quality. Although I remember when satellite radio, I'm not sure if it's still happening. I don't think it is, but Bob Dylan, they gave him like a channel or a show on satellite radio, and he did this really odd stuff where he would just play music and talk in between songs and give you history lessons about graham crackers and stuff. It was, yeah, really fascinating in his like latest incarnation. It was an interesting version of him. I think they played a lot of odd music. I don't know how much fun it was to listen to, but it was his you know, his talking and his perspective and things he would say between the songs, I think, were the most interesting part. And I think, yeah, that's what is interesting about him, is the things that he responds to. Make him interesting to watch documentaries on, seeing his influences and what he does with those things. All right. Okay, so we're ready to write, except I've already written one, so we're all ready to write. Where am I? Oh, geez, I haven't been looking at this the whole time. All right. I wasn't seeing the live version of anything. I could have been, the microphone could have been off this whole time, and you would have been happier for it. Okay, so let's do a brief break and talk about something funny I found at the convenience store. Surprise. All right, here we are. Okay. So this is just something funny I found. And actually, I didn't do any research on the company because who even knows? I love that. So they'd always do the little disclaimers. Okay, so the reveal is so gyoza snacks. So I love the packaging. It's very Chinese-y restaurant kind of thing. So we have these gyoza okake kind of snacks, and they do a pretty good job of simulating flavors of things. So I was very interested in this. So just a little bit about the history of gyoza, which I thought was a little funny. So I mean, gyoza, as far as like being, they're Chinese originally, of course. Like a lot of Japanese food is Chinese in origin, and there's kind of myths and things about how they were invented or where they came from, but the shape is very distinct. And they say that gyoza could even be older than Japan, like older than historic Japan, because it could have come from Chinese medicine a long time ago. There's one odd little myth about some medicine fellow, some I don't know what the term would be, the Chinese term would be, but made this preparation and folded this, heated this and folded some sort of concoction in a dough wrapper in this way to cure frostbitten ears. So who knows? I don't think it's just the shape. I mean, that the shape of that, I guess, would have had some kind of, bandage type purpose, or could have, been specific to some sort of type of the body, but who knows? I mean, who even knows? So much of, Chinese history can be a lie, and there's a lot of dishonesty and a lot of fantastic things. So anyhow, gyoza. So the shape, everybody knows pot stickers, I think, is what they get called a lot in the U.S., but the history is interesting, and they didn't really become popular until occupations of parts of China. So Japanese soldiers came back to Japan saying, "Oh, I had these really good dumplings, and they're shaped like this, and they had this in them." And so the Japanese version, so basically gyoza, the pronunciation or the name for these things, they're written, you can tell they're an adopted cuisine because they're written in Chinese kanji that really isn't used very commonly in Japanese, and they just pronounce it how they pronounce that kanji. So the Chinese word, I think, is the word for horn because of the shape in Chinese, and it just, the pronunciation of those two kanji letters is just gyoza, and so it doesn't really have a exact meaning. It's just they are just pronouncing that kanji, and everyone knows what that means. But the Japanese version is very thinner. The wrapper is much thinner, and a lot of garlic. So basically, it's minced pork and cabbage, onion, green onion, and garlic inside the wrapper, and steamed or fried, or usually pan fried with some steaming, combination of pan frying and steaming usually. And then the sauce that's most commonly, and you see, what do you see? You see it here, is the tare sauce, which is a combination of shoyu, sweet rice vinegar, and a spicy either just red pepper oil, or a combination, like I can't think of but a kind of a preparation of some more garlic and some other red pepper and things. So those three things mixed together. And so that's what I'm expecting this to taste like if they're simulating gyoza. And so you can vaguely see what this is actually going to look like on the outside here. And they even say, there's a little funny disclaimer here that says this image doesn't represent what's in the bag. So don't expect to open this up and there to be something gyoza shaped inside. It's a gyoza flavor. Oh, sorry. I'm going to make a lot of noise opening these up. But I like the packaging. It's that traditional kind of, Chinese nostalgia kind of look. And so there's been phases. The relationship between Japan and China is a little bit like, America and England, where the origin of a lot of the language, the written language, and a lot of cultural traditions and things were brought to Japan and adapted to a Japanese style, just like a lot of, British traditions and language and things were kind of bastardized in, adopted, changed, not bastardized, but changed in America to be the American version of things. A lot of that, because Japanese culture and tastes and things were so strong. But there's been kind of always phases of liking Chinese things, and especially like our grandparents' generation always thought Chinese restaurants were kind of classy, expensive restaurants. So Chinese cuisine is like nice, foreign but still Asian cuisine, and it would go to a nice, expensive Chinese restaurant was always the choice when you have a special occasion. And things like Dragon Ball, the manga, was all based in kind of Chinese, loosely had some, Chinese mythology and things in it. So, but it had a very Chinese look, and this kind of border decoration on a lot of panels, a lot of, title covers and titles and things. So there's always kind of this back and forth with Chinese things becoming popular, especially nostalgic Chinese things, because that feels like ancient Asia, just the same way. So this is what's inside. See, they told you, they showed you. And it's, oh, geez, yeah. Yeah, it smells like gyoza very much. And I mean, I've had things like this, not this flavor, but shaped like this before. So they're very crunchy. So, oh my God, yep. It's exactly like, wow, that's good. It's very garlicky though. It's exactly like the, a very crunchy version of the taste of gyoza in the tare sauce. Wow. Amazing. Yes, I did a lot of research on the company, because I'm sure they're not a huge company, but I love the packaging was great, and I wanted to see how close it was, and it's incredibly close to the taste of gyoza in the sauce. Yeah, I mean, it's got the kind of fried. There's a fried taste because it's kind of a fried snack, and there's a lot of garlic in it. There's that touch of the chili. There's the shoyu, and vinegar is all in there. It's amazing. Wow. Yeah. Japan rarely disappoints. When they say something is a flavor, they come pretty close. I mean, they come pretty darn close to simulating certain things. And some of the tastes are so surprisingly subtle and bizarre, but they found a powder that tastes just like gyoza, and they put it all over these crunchy things. All right. So, one more. I'll stop chewing in your ear. But, wow. That's amazing. Yeah. So, gyoza, little gyoza, okake snacks. Oh, and the flavor, double flavor. Ooh, yeah. So that's why they're so flavorful. They have double the flavor. And always, things that are double are represented, instead of writing the word double. If you see a large W on something for a size or, amount of something or flavor, W means double because of the kana pronunciation. It's double, so half of the daburu is what you're saying, and they don't say W, they daburu, and that's double. So big W means double size or two or something very often. Double burgers, double cheeseburgers and stuff very often say W. So that's a bit confusing, isn't it? All right. Wow. I forgot I was up so close to the camera. So I'm sorry that I'm eating on camera. That's lovely. All right. Back to the drawing and actually the writing portion. All right. So yeah, it's surprising with as old as Japan is that histories of a lot of things are so recent. I mean, there's so much or a lot changed, since the 20th century. So a lot of things of modern Japan, there's still, a lot of ancient tradition and culture, but a lot of modern tastes and aesthetics and looks and things are just of the 20th century. So it's not actually ancient. So Japan is a funny, really always a funny combination of things. Are surprised how new or how recent, like beef and corn and things are to Japan. And when you assume that, it's been forever, it's been centuries, but not very often. The modern tastes are very recently acquired. Oh, wait, one thing I want to do is maybe get this going. Oh, not like that. Not like that. Well, maybe that is going to be best. And then I want to make sure this line goes across. There we go. I'd rather have the shadow broken than the edge of the water. Okay. Yeah, I've definitely done almost this exact kind of combination of items. Let's see if I write the exact same joke. Yeah, so the idea was, you dump the bag of the fish water with the fish into your fish tank. And how do they feel about that? Okay, so it's a relationship and they're raising an adopted child. Okay. They didn't fail. Okay, so they hadn't known each other long enough. Had not known each other long enough to know they could properly raise a goldfish together. All right, there might be a more efficient way. Break it at no. So they had not known each other long enough to know. They had not known. No. To feel that they could properly raise a goldfish together. They're not known each other long enough to feel that they could properly raise a goldfish together. But the joke is they throw away the bag. They'd not known each other long enough to feel that they could properly raise a goldfish together. Yeah, I definitely didn't write this joke before because this is clumsy as hell. Yeah, maybe it's better. They just met. They had just met. Yeah, so kind of the, dating divorced with kids. I'm trying to get somewhere with that kind of idea. So they had just met. Yeah. And now they had just met and now had to consider if they could raise they just met and now had to consider if they could properly. They just met and now had to consider if they could properly raise a goldfish together. That's better. I like the idea, but it's not making me laugh. They had just met and now had to consider if they could properly raise a goldfish together. I think that works. Yeah, the joke is the bag isn't involved. Okay. The labelless. Labelless? Labelless. I'll go back and check that later. The labelless can opening marathon was producing mixed results. Labelless, the no label. Yeah. Yeah, sorry, I pre-wrote this because I didn't want to forget that because I liked the can opening marathon and mixed results because they're just kind of slapping things all together. Labelless, the unlabeled can opening marathon. Lost a label. The lost label can opening marathon. Something like that. Yeah, I think lost label is better. Labelless is not so funny and hard. It's maybe confusing. The unlabeled can opening, but unlabeled kind of means it never had labels. That's why I said lost labeled. Unlabeled, the labelless or the missing label Missing label can opening marathon was producing mixed results. The missing label can opening marathon was producing mixed results. Yeah, so that's just kind of a silly situation. Yes. How the sausage is in fact made. Oh, so thick. He's not happy about what was found. Okay, the missing label can opening marathon. That might come out differently. I'll give that a thought before I publish that. The missing label can opening marathon was producing mixed results, and they had just met and now had to consider if they could properly raise a goldfish together. All right, that is it. That is what is happening. Oh, yeah, if I lean in, look at that wonderful light. If I sit back, whoa, yeah. So, I don't know. It's better. I don't know if I can actually leave this light here week to week, but it's much better. Maybe there's a way to hang it. But anyhow, that is this week's live stream. So thank you very much for watching or joining, or what's a long one. But please check back every week. If you enjoyed this, if you're watching it in the archive, I do this every week, and usually it's Sunday night North American time, so ranging between 8 to 10, maybe closer to 12 some days. I think it's probably 1 o'clock now. So it's pretty late in some places, but yeah, so I do this some variation of Sunday night, occasionally Monday night, if my schedule is a little odd. But thank you so much for joining me, and I hope it was fun and enjoyable, and please go through the archive. I'm kind of the first year I did this, I talked about a lot of creative issues, about being a creative person in your career and doing things and kind of how to keep your head straight. And more recently, it's just been more pop culture and just what's on my mind, because I wasn't sure that it's that interesting to people that read this cartoon. They're not all creative people. So you'll notice a little bit of that in the previous year of live streams. But I want to say thank you very much to my patrons. They have made this possible to happen weekly. I'd kind of given this up, and it was revitalized by the Patreon. So thank you very much. If you are a patron, and if you would like to become a patron and support this cartoon, get the live stream happening more often, get the cartoon to be daily. Many things can happen with your support. Please visit patreon.com/abusecartoons. If you'd like to follow the cartoon on Twitter, it's abusecartoons, and the website is, of course, abusecartoons.com. If you'd like a subscription to have this delivered to your inbox with thousands of other new and old amazing comics, please visit gocomics.com/domesticabuse for this cartoon and having it and a subscription to everything that's involved there. Otherwise, I will see you next week. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.